Have you ever looked around and felt like the life you're living doesn't belong to you? On the surface, everything seems fine. You're functioning. You're checking the boxes. You're doing what's expected. But underneath, something feels off. Something's missing. A discomfort, a dull ache, a kind of spiritual fatigue that no one sees, not even you. Sometimes, you're not exactly sad, but you're not really alive either. And everyone tells you the same thing. Take a break. Get more sleep. Think positive. Be grateful. But deep down, you know, this isn't burnout. It's sedation. You've been numbed, conditioned to chase comfort, trained to avoid pain, taught that peace means you're doing life right. But Nietzsche saw through all of that. He believed life isn't built on the pursuit of happiness. It's built on the struggle to grow, to rise, to overcome. And he called that drive the will to power. If you can feel it awakening inside you, then listen closely. Most people are taught that the goal of life is happiness, to feel good, to avoid pain, to be comfortable, balanced, at peace. But Nietzsche rejected that completely. He believed that happiness is not the aim of life. It is a byproduct and occasional side effect. The real engine behind existence, he said, is something far more raw, something deeper, something harder. He called it the will to power. Now, this idea is often misunderstood. It's not about control, not about dominating others or chasing status. The will to power is about overcoming, not the world but yourself. It's the inner force that compels a seed to break through soil, that drives a child to stand and walk, even after falling again and again. That pushes the human spirit to face its limits and then surpass them. This is not about peace. This is about pressure, about friction, about the relentless demand of life itself to become more. Life does not tolerate stagnation. I demand metamorphosis. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Growth doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from friction. Nietzsche saw the will to power as the most honest expression of life, a biological, psychological, and spiritual force that pushes us toward expansion, not comfort. It doesn't want stillness. It wants intensity. And most of all, it wants transformation. Now contrast that with what you've been told. You've been sold the will to happiness. The idea that life should feel good, that your goal is to be content, calm, unbothered. But real evolution doesn't happen in calm. It happens under tension. Think of it like this. Scrolling through social media for 3 hours? That's comfort. That's dopamine on demand. But lifting a heavy weight at the gym? That's pain. That's resistance. That's the will to power in action. One leaves you numb. The other makes you stronger. Nietzsche believed that every living thing carries this will inside it, this raw desire to overcome limitation, to transcend, to transform chaos into form. But to live this way, to live by the will to power, means you can no longer settle. It means that every weakness becomes an invitation, every fear becomes a test, and every choice becomes a fork in the road. Evolve or repeat. The will to power isn't just a feeling, it's a decision. And Nietzsche built his entire philosophy around it. From this core idea, 3 powerful concepts emerge. First, the revaluation of values. This is the conscious destruction of inherited morality. It's the refusal to blindly obey values designed to keep you small values that worship humility, obedience, guilt. Instead, Nietzsche challenged us to create new values, rooted not in fear but in strength, not in denial of life, but in full affirmation of it. Second, eternal recurrence. This is not a metaphor. It's a psychological test. Imagine being forced to live this exact life again and again and again for eternity. Same joys, same failures, same regrets. Would you embrace that? Or would the thought of reliving your days fill you with dread? Eternal recurrence isn't meant to comfort you. It's meant to confront you. It forces you to ask, am I living in a way I would choose again and again? And third, the Ubermensch, or the overman. This is Nietzsche's vision of the fully awakened human being, someone who refuses the herd, who doesn't beg for meaning but creates it, who doesn't follow life but shapes it. The overman doesn't seek permission. He doesn't conform. He doesn't wait to be saved. He says. He builds. He becomes. All three of these ideas' new values, eternal responsibility, radical self-creation, are rooted in one thing: the will to power. Because, in Nietzsche's view, life is not asking you to be happy. It's demanding that you become more than you are. Not once, but constantly. The truth is brutal, and it's simple. You were not made for comfort. You were made for confrontation with the world and with yourself. But if the will to power is the engine of life, then what's the fuel? Nietzsche didn't hesitate. It's suffering. And that's where we go next, because everything you've been taught about pain is wrong. We live in a culture that treats suffering like a malfunction, as if pain means something has gone wrong, as if discomfort is a sign that you're broken, failing, off track. But Nietzsche didn't see pain that way. He saw it as necessary, deliberate, even sacred, because in his view, suffering is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. Pain is not an interruption in the process. It is the process, the fire that forges, the pressure that reveals, the collapse that clears the way for something new. Nietzsche didn't just theorize this, he lived it. Chronic illness, isolation, rejection. His life was a storm of physical and psychological torment. And yet, from that suffering, he wrote ideas that cut deeper than any philosopher of his time, or ours. He understood what most people spend their lives avoiding. Suffering is not the enemy. It is the price of transformation. You must have chaos within you, he wrote, to give birth to a dancing star. This is not poetry. It is instruction, because real strength is not built in peace. It is carved in chaos. Clarity does not come when everything is calm. It comes after the collapse. Think about your life. When did you grow the most? Was it during moments of ease? Or was it in the wreckage, after the betrayal, after the failure, after the loss that cracked your identity in half? You didn't grow despite the pain. You grew because of it, but only when you chose to face it, to sit with it, to bleed through it instead of running from it. And that choice, that moment when you stop negotiating with pain, is when you begin to change. See, the modern world tells you to escape discomfort, scroll it away, drink it down, numb it, hide it, reframe it with positive affirmations. But Nietzsche would have said this: you are not meant to be anesthetized. You are meant to be awakened. Pain with purpose is not punishment. It is sacred. It is the pressure that turns raw stone into form. And you are the stone. Suffering is the hammer. Each blow shapes you, not into who the world wants you to be, but into who you are meant to become. That's why Nietzsche believed that suffering is the battlefield of the will to power. Because when things are easy, anyone can seem strong. But when your back is against the wall, when the mask comes off, when there's no applause, no help, no clarity, that's when your real character is revealed. And it's also when it can finally be rebuilt. This is why so few people evolve. Because growth requires death. The death of your weaker self. The death of your comfort. The death of your old excuses. And that funeral hurts. Most skip the funeral and shrink. Blame the world. Avoid the mirror. But here's the hard truth. All pain that is not transformed gets repeated. Unmet recycle. Suppressed anger reemerges. Avoided truths become patterns that quietly destroy your future. That's why Nietzsche invites you not to escape suffering, but to enter it with your eyes wide open, like a warrior walking into battle, not to be destroyed, but to be made lethal. If pain is inevitable, the question isn't, how do I avoid it? The question is, what will I become because of it? This is the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy. Not avoidance, but transmutation. Not coping, but creating. To dance with pain instead of hiding from it. To forge your fragments into force. To rise from what was meant to ruin you. Even warriors rotif they mistake sedation for peace. And the biggest trap? It's not pain. It's comfort. Let's break it open. Let's be honest. There are moments when you feel it. That quiet voice. That subtle pressure in your chest. The sense that you are not living as fully, as fiercely, as honestly as you could. You go to work. You fulfill your roles. You say the right things. Post the right words. Wear the right mask. But somewhere behind your eyes, you know something's off. Because being functional is not the same as being alive. And the truth is, we've created a culture that rewards exactly that. High-functioning emptiness. A life built on performance, not presence. Success defined by validation, not authenticity. Society does not want you to grow. It wants you to comply, to be manageable, predictable, safe. So it praises your politeness, applauds your obedience, and slowly, subtly, it breaks your spirit in the name of peace. But this peace is artificial. It's not the peace of strength. It's the sedation of silence. You don't live to grow. You live to be liked. And somewhere along the way, you were convinced that was enough. This is how the world keeps you small. Not through violence, but through stories. Through ideas so deeply embedded in your thinking, you mistake them for your own. Ideas like, stay in your lane. Don't rock the boat. Keep your head down. Be realistic. And worst of all, just be grateful. These messages are dressed in kindness. They sound humble, polite, reasonable, but they are anything but. Because behind that surface-level niceness is a deep and quiet betrayal. The moment you choose comfort over confrontation, you betray your potential. The moment you stay silent when something in you wants to roar, you betray your integrity. The moment you settle for less than what you're capable of, you betray the life you could have lived. Nietzsche had no patience for this kind of existence. He called it decadence. Not material decay, but a spiritual one. A slow rot of the soul. And the most dangerous part? It's hard to detect. You can have a career, a partner, hobbies, even a smile. But inside, you're shrinking. You're disappearing under the weight of your own inaction. Because this world is not designed to make you strong. It's designed to keep you agreeable, dull, distracted. That's why self-sabotage isn't just a bad habit. It's a system, one you've been trained to participate in. And over time, you don't even realize it's happening. You scroll to avoid silence. You apologize to stay invisible. You conform and become forgettable. And eventually, you mistake survival for success. But here's the deeper truth. You are not being held back by some outside force. You're being held back by the version of you that has learned to fear its own strength. Because real strength threatens the system. It's not polite. It's not safe. It's not quiet. Which is why so many people never unlock it. Because power has a price. You have to bury the part of yourself that lives to please. The part that avoids pain. That flinches at judgment. That needs permission to be real. And the death of your weaker self, is the beginning of everything else. So what do you do with that version of you? The one that keeps you passive, hesitant, afraid. Nietzsche's answer was never polite. You kill it. And that's where we go next. Because true transformation is not a gentle process. It is war, and the battlefield is within you. You are not a finished product. You are not a static identity. You are a process always shifting, always becoming. But becoming what? That depends entirely on what you're willing to let die. Nietzsche believed that the human being is not a fixed essence, but a becoming a force in motion. And that force either evolves or it decay. There is no standing still. There is no neutral life. To become more, you must confront a brutal truth. Growth is an act of betrayal, not betrayal of others, but of your former self, the self that got you here, the self that survived but never fully lived. That version of you may have been necessary once. It knew how to stay safe. It knew how to fit in, how to avoid conflict, blend in, comply. But now, it's in your way, and the path forward demands its death. This is the essence of self-overcoming. It's not about improvement. It's about transformation. And transformation always comes at a cost. There are 3 deaths you must face. The first is the death of the ego, the false self you present to the world, the persona built for approval, validation, and applause. To let it go is to risk being misunderstood and to choose authenticity over admiration. The second is the death of old beliefs, the inherited ideas that no longer serve you, the values you were taught to obey without question. To release them is to lose certainty and gain freedom. And the third is the death of comfort, the familiar routines, the emotional safety nets, the internal scripts that whisper, stay the same, stay small, stay quiet. To leave comfort behind is to enter chaos, but it is a sacred chaos, the kind that breaks the shell so something greater can emerge. This process is not linear. It is not clean. It is not Instagrammable. It is a spiral. You rise, you fall, you rise again differently, stronger, sharper, stripped of what no longer fits. Real power isn't the absence of failure. It's the ability to rise with a version of yourself that didn't exist before the fall. That's why Nietzsche didn't romanticize growth. He knew it meant destruction of identity, of comfort, of illusion. But it's in that destruction that the Ubermensch is born, the overman, the one who walks alone, not because he rejects connection, but because he refuses imitation. He is not a product of his environment. He is the architect of meaning in his own life. He doesn't ask, "What will the world give me?" He asks, "What will I become in spite of it?" He breaks with the herd. He abandons borrowed values. He stops asking for permission to exist as he truly is. And in doing so, he becomes something rare, something dangerous, a human being who cannot be manipulated, who cannot be controlled, who cannot be broken by the noise around him, because he has already shattered the lies within. To live this way is not easy. It's not rewarded by the world. It doesn't come with applause, but it comes with something better: integrity, clarity, freedom, because you're no longer trapped in who you used to be. You're not imprisoned by your past. You're not defined by your pain. You've used it, and you've built something from it. You are no longer the person who needed safety. You are the one who stepped into fire and stayed long enough to become something the world cannot ignore. But the greatest war isn't fought in mountains or deserts. It's fought here, now, in a world built to keep you soft, obedient, and numb. And that's where we go next. Because becoming yourself is only half the battle. The real challenge is staying awake in a society that profits from your sleep. Try to live with intensity today, and you'll be called obsessive. Try to speak with clarity, and you'll be labeled arrogant. Try to grow beyond your limitations, and you'll be warned to slow down, to stay grounded, to be realistic. This is the paradox of modern life. We claim to value freedom, but reward obedience. We celebrate authenticity, but punish those who live outside the script. We applaud individuality until it threatens our comfort. Nietzsche would have seen it clearly. This isn't evolution, it's domestication. A society built not to elevate your potential, but to suppress it, to shape you into something manageable, predictable, quiet. And it doesn't use chains. It uses comforts, conveniences, distractions. Everything is designed to keep you sedated, not asleep in body, but numb in spirit. Technology does your thinking. Wellness culture soothes your anxiety, but never asks where it came from. Social media hands you instant validation, so you never have to confront your own emptiness. And what happens when you start to resist this machinery? When you stop complying? When you choose discomfort over comfort, truth over ease, purpose over popularity, you become a threat. Because real strength, the kind that Nietzsche spoke of, is incompatible with the modern narrative. It's not loud, it doesn't posture, but it disrupts. It needs no applause-only presence. To live the will to power today is to swim upstream against the current of cheap pleasure, constant distraction, and cultural sedation. You must become a kind of internal warrior, strong, silent, grounded, unafraid of being misunderstood, willing to walk alone, anchored to something deeper than approval. And that requires a new definition of freedom. Freedom is not doing whatever you want, whenever you feel like it. That's not freedom. That's impulsa in disguise. Freedom is obedience to your higher self, not your impulses, even when it's painful, even when it costs you, even when no one claps. It's the discipline to act in alignment with truth, not comfort, and the courage to carry that truth alone, if you must. Because being free today means being dangerous to the system, not in violence, but in clarity, in conviction, in the refusal to play along with a life that was never yours to begin with. That's why the will to power is so rare. It requires more than insight. It demands action, sacrifice, integrity, It means saying no when the world begs you to say yes. It means setting boundaries that make people uncomfortable. It means being hated for who you are, rather than loved for a version of you that doesn't exist. And in return, you gain something the world can never give you. You gain self-respect, alignment, power. Not power over others, but power over your own mind, your own fears, your own narrative. That's the kind of power no system can touch. Nietzsche didn't write for comfort. He wrote for fire. He wanted to ignite those who were ready, not to be accepted, but to become undeniable. And that is the call facing you now, because understanding doesn't make you dangerous. Choice does. If you've made it this far, the question isn't whether you understand. It's whether you'll finally choose. In the end, it always comes down to a choice. Not between good and evil. Not between right and wrong. But between power and comfort. Comfort is the slowest form of death. It wraps itself in softness, offers safety, and whispers, "You're fine just the way you are." But that voice is a liar. Every belief becomes a brick. Are you building a temple or sealing your own cell? Every choice, every thought, every avoidance is brick and mortar. You are either forging your mind into steel or letting it rust in silence. This world doesn't care if you wake up. It won't beg you to rise, and it certainly won't wait for you. So the real question is, what part of you must die for something greater to be born? Your excuses? Your need to be liked? Your addiction to numbness? The soul is an alchemical fire. What enters as weakness must exit as will. You will either burn or become fire. So choose now. And if you're ready to bury your weaker self, to walk the road few have the will to walk, drop it in the comments below. What part of you must die so your power can finally live?